Alright gang, welcome to a new episode of 2 Drink Minimum. Today we're doing a full-on spoiler review of The Last Jedi. Reason why I want to get this review out right now is a lot of the audience reviews for this movie right now are piss fucking poor. I don't know what's going on. I mean, initially when Force Awakens came out, everybody was like, oh, what the fuck, man, it's just like episode 4 all over again. Boo. So, Rian Johnson basically goes and does something completely off the cuff and completely original. And now, oh, hang on, dogs. Alright, go do your thing. Pet ownership. Anyway, so Rian Johnson goes and does something completely off the cuff, different, unlike anything anyone's ever seen before, and now all of a sudden it's not Star Wars, Disney's destroyed our childhood, Rian Johnson's shit on the entire franchise. Come on, folks. Like, can't we all just get along? Anyway, the movie. Opening crawl, pans down, not to Acto. I know that a lot of people were like, it's going to pick up exactly where 7 left off. Sort of, kind of, but there is an opening scene where the rebels are trying to escape from Dakar, which is that planet they were on at the end of 7. Basically, all of them making a run for it. The First Order fleet arrives with this massive, huge dreadnought ship that's like 6 times the size of a regular Star Destroyer, with these huge cannons on the underside of it. So Hux is in one of the ships, and lo and behold, Poe shows up. That's in the trailers too, where you see him flying up with BB-8 in the back. He basically signals the ship that Hux is on, and like, yeah, I need to talk to Hux. And Hux is like, you rebel scum, I'm gonna wipe you from the face of the galaxy, and da-da-da-da-da-da. And then Poe's like, okay, I'll hold. Really kind of a weird, funny scene to start it off with. Obviously, while Poe's stalling, he's gearing up that little booster jet thing he's got on the back of his X-Wing. He uses that basically to cut the distance between where he is and where the dreadnought is, so he can get in there and destroy all the surface cannons, which will in turn let the bombers come in and try to blow up the dreadnought. So Leia basically says, okay, we've escaped, pull back, let's get the hell out of here. And Poe's like, no, fuck you, the fight's on. Click, turns off the radio. They wind up blowing up the dreadnought, but they lose like their entire bomber fleet. Every one of them gets wiped out. Rose's sister, Paige, is one of the pilots on one of the bombers, and she dies in a moment of heroic, trying to save everybody, opening the bomb bay doors and clearing everything. Where the hell did those dogs go? There they are. Clearing out the, getting all the bombs to drop on the dreadnought in time. So, yeah, so they all escape eventually, get away, and now we pan to Ahch-To, which is where Rey and Luke are, obviously. It literally picks up right where 7 left off. She hands him the lightsaber, he looks at it, looks at her, and just goes, and throws the lightsaber over his shoulder off the cliff. Rey can't believe it. She's like, what the, like, come on. And he just walks right past her, doesn't say a word, and goes back to his hut. So she's sitting there trying to get him to talk to her, trying to get him to talk to her. Eventually, he's sitting in his little hut, and you hear bang, bang, bang on the door, and he's like, piss off, go away, leave me alone. And all of a sudden, the door gets ripped right off the hinges, and in comes Chewbacca. And Luke's like, Chewie, what are you doing here? And Rey's like, you're coming back with us. There's no time to explain what's going on now. I'll explain everything on the Falcon. And right away, Luke looks at her and looks at Chewie, and Chewie's kind of like sad Wookiee. And Luke's like, where's Han? Which is kind of weird, because I thought he would have known what was going on with Han through the Force, the way Leia did. But I guess not. Anyway, so they explain what's going on. They start trying to explain what's going on, and Luke's like, I'm not getting involved. I came to this island. This is the most remote place I could think of. You don't go to the most, what does he say? You don't go to the most unfindable place in the galaxy for no reason. And he's basically like, I decided I was going to come here. Oh, come on, dogs. In you go. So he says, yeah, basically, my plan was to come here and die. He's like, I don't want to be involved with anything anymore. Come on, door. Lock. Bird. Oh, my God. What is going on? There we go. Sorry about that, folks. Minor technical difficulties with the door. So yeah, so he's basically like, yeah, I came here to die. I don't want to be involved. The Jedi are over. So Rey basically spends her time following him around the island. He's doing his thing. He's going fishing. He's milking some big, huge beasts for, it was green milk or something he's drinking. Looked pretty gross, but, I guess you got to do what you got to do to survive. So, oh yeah, this is the part where, this was kind of weird too. Rey and Kylo can almost communicate through the Force. He can see her, she can see him, they can talk to each other, they can almost touch each other using the Force. And it starts off, she's like, you're a monster, and da-da-da-da, and it ends up, eventually, by the end of it all, she's trying to convince him to turn to the good side. And he's in turn trying to convince her to go to the bad side. It doesn't get really explained till later on what's going on. It ends up being that Snoke was the one that connected their minds. He mentions that later on. Another cool scene on Ahch-To is when Chewie's having a little barbecue. And he's got a porg on a stick. Literally cooked. Just about to eat it. And there's a little flock of porgs just sitting there staring at him. Going, and he gets guilted out and turns around the other way, roars at them, they fly off. He turns around, there's another little porg with his bottom lip quivering, and he's like, ooh. And so Chewie basically can't bring himself to eat the porgs. They do wind up being buddies, obviously, as you see later on from the trailers. There was another scene near the beginning where Kylo goes to see Snoke, and Hux is explaining to Snoke what their plan is. They've basically got this way that they can track the Resistance fleet through hyperspace. So no matter where they go, they're fucked. They can jump, and then 30 seconds later, the First Order will be there. The premise of this whole thing, kind of the snowball effect, is the rebels are running out of gas. It's basically what it is. It's the world's slowest car chase in the planet. They're just outside of the range of the First Order guns, slowly trying to get away with, like, coasting on fumes, basically. That, in turn, becomes Finn's mission. Finn, at this point, wakes up. He's in a Bacta suit. Kind of similar to the one that tank Luke was in Empire, but a little bit of a modified version of it. So Poe gets back from his bombing run and sees Finn, and he's like, Finn, what's going on? You must have 1,000 questions. And Finn's like, where's Rey? That's the first thing he says. He's like, where's Rey? Because he's basically been out of it since the end of 7 when Kylo carved up his back with the lightsaber. So they fill him in on what's going on. Rey took off to go see Luke. Leia's apparently got some little transmitter device that Rey can lock onto to find her way back to the fleet when she's done with Luke. What happened next? So yeah, so this is where Finn basically meets Rose. She's in one of the cargo bays crying because her sister died. And Finn's trying to escape in an escape pod with a satchel full of stuff to get the hell out of there because he's like, this fleet's screwed. I don't want to get involved. I need to find a way to get Rey and get her away from this so I can save her. So he's trying to smooth talk his way into getting into the escape pod, and Rose ends up zapping him because she says she's been spending all morning tasering people that were trying to escape in escape pods. So he basically is getting carted off to the brig by Rose, and he's like, they can track us through hyperspace. And she's like, well, what do you mean? There's got to be a way to fix that. So they decide they're going to figure out a way. They get in touch with Maz Kanata. Basically, Finn and Rose go and tell Poe what's going on. And Maz Kanata's like, there's a guy on Canto Bight that'll be able to help you. He'll be able to crack the code, get you onto the Star Destroyer, and get this all squared away so that they can't track you and you have a window of opportunity to escape without them knowing where you're going. So Finn and Rose head off to Canto Bight, which is the casino planet that they were showing all the time in the behind-the-scenes stuff and all that. Looking for the hacker who ends up being Benicio del Toro's character, DJ, which literally means don't join. He says that to Finn at one point where he's like, you do your own thing, don't pick a side and, you know, let the chips fall where they may kind of thing is his philosophy of life. So they end up getting captured for parking in the wrong spot by the Canto Bight police and thrown in jail, which is where they bump into DJ, who says, okay, well, yeah, I heard what you're talking about. I can do this for you. Let's get out of here. And basically cracks the lock on the door. They all escape. There's a weird scene with a bunch of like space horses that Rose they're called fathiers. They're basically being mistreated like usual in every fucking movie like this. And Rose decides she's going to spring them all and free them so that they can escape. In the process of this, they bump into a little kid who almost sounds the alarm on them, and Rose is like, no, we're resistance. And she gives him her little rebel insignia ring. Kid comes up later on. I'll explain. So they escape from... Bless you. They escape from Canto Bight with DJ, BB-8, Finn, and Rose, and decide they're going to go and they're going to get into Snoke's ship and disable the tracker from there. So, yeah, so they steal some uniforms. This whole thing like Episode 4 again, except not Stormtrooper gear. They sneak in, think they've got it, and then all of a sudden Phasma shows up with all of her crew, and it turns out the DJ basically fucked them and sold them out to the First Order for a reward. Oh, I completely overlooked one bit. The part after Snoke and Kylo are talking, and Snoke's just being a prick to him. He's like, you're not a Vader. You're nothing but a child with a mask. And so Kylo's fucking pissed. And that's the scene where he's in the elevator and he smashes his helmet. Doors open, he looks at these guys and he's like, get my ship ready. And he goes after the fleet with 2 wingmen, basically following him the same way Vader had in 4, blasting the shit out of everything. Comes up on Leia's ship in the trailer again. You see her looking at him, looking at her, looking at him, looking at her, and he's got his finger on the trigger just about to pull it, and you're like, oh fuck, no, you can't, and he doesn't, but his wingmen do, and they blast the bridge with a couple of ion photon torpedoes, or whatever torpedoes, and Leia literally gets sucked out of the bridge into space, along with Admiral Akbar and all the leadership of the Resistance all in one fell swoop. And there was like a collective gasp in the theater, because it's like, oh my god, is this how they're going to do it? Like, obviously with Carrie Fisher having passed away last year, Leia's not going to be in 9. This is the one scene, guys, where I had the biggest issue with in the whole movie. They pan out to outer space and Leia's sort of floating there, dead, crystallizing, like almost like Star-Lord in Guardians when he goes to save Gamora in the first one. She's basically crystallizing over, her eyes are shut, and then all of a sudden you see her hand reach out like this, and the Force theme kicks in, and she literally Mary Poppins her way through the debris field, back onto the ship, and gets saved. And it's like, what the fuck? You had your perfect opportunity to kill the character off in a good way, and you save her? I mean, obviously at this point in the time, no one realized what was going to happen, the tragedy that was Carrie Fisher and Debbie Reynolds. So I guess I don't know, but in hindsight, that would have been the perfect way to get rid of the character. It sounds mean to say it that way, but you know what I mean. Rather than give yourself the headache of what the fuck are we going to do with her for episode 9. I've already heard they're not going to do a CGI replacement. There was talk at one point that they were going to recast the role. At one point I heard Sally Field possibly as Princess Leia, and I was like, no. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what they managed to do, or what they can do with the character come the next movie, because from what I read originally was 7 was supposed to be Harrison Ford's big thing, 8 was going to be Mark Hamill, and 9 was going to be Carrie's. Obviously they can't do that now. So anyway, so she gets injured. She's out of commission for a while in the med bay recovering. Poe figures he's going to be the one taking over the fleet. They give the fleet to Vice Admiral Holdo, who is played by Laura Dern's character, the one with the purple hair. And she's kind of wishy-washy in a way. It's just like, okay, well, full speed ahead until we run out of gas. And Poe's like, this is ridiculous. We've got to do something. We're running out of gas. They're tracking us. What's the plan? And no one will tell him what the plan is. So he basically mutinies. Takes Holdo and her staff hostage and decides he's going to take over the ship. And from there, he's still waiting for Finn and Rose to get back to say that they've blocked the tracker. He's got Finn on comms, so he can hear that they just got caught. And then he hears Phasma going, "Oh, FN 2187, nice to have you back." So right away, Poe's like, "Oh, fuck, they're screwed. They got caught. They're not going to make it." While this is going on, Holdo's plan was to take the rest of the transport shuttles that were on the cruiser, and with some sort of cloaking tech, they were going to haul ass down to this planet Crate, which is in the DLC for Battlefront 2. Big final battle with the walkers and stuff. Anyway, so they're headed for that planet. One of the things too is DJ, in part of his sellout to the First Order, gave them the codes for the transport shuttles. So the First Order just starts picking them off one by one by one, and they're fucked basically. So Holdo, Laura Dern's character, is like, well, I got to do something. She jumps in the pilot's seat, turns the ship around, and some of the resistance are like, she's fucking running away. And Poe's like, no, she's not. And by God, she aims the ship right at Snoke's super Uber Star Destroyer or whatever the thing is, and kicks in light speed. And it's a fucking great scene, guys. It's complete silence. You just see the streak, and then you see the streak cut right through a third of Snoke's ship. And then you get like that sort of, the sonic bombs that Django had in 2, the boom sound goes off like bonkers, and the whole ship rips in half. Finn, in the meantime, is still on the ship with Rose and BB-8. All hell's breaking loose. Things are blowing up. Rose is pinned down by some stormtroopers, and then Phasma shows up, and Finn's like, fuck this. Grabs that the little thing the dude in 7 had, the traitor dude that he fought with the lightsaber. So he grabs one of those and goes at Phasma, and they just start going at each other. She winds up knocking him off into an elevator shaft and figures he's dead, kind of thing. Rose is like, oh no, and Phasma immediately turns around. Pretty cool too. She whips this mini blaster out of nowhere and just like takes like 7 or 8 pot shots at Rose. Doesn't hit her. As she's doing that, you see the elevator coming up behind her with Finn standing there with the fucking staff. He's like, hey! Whack! Smacks her upside the head, knocks her down, cracks her visor. So you can actually see Gwendolyn Christie's eye inside the mask. And she's lying on the ground, beaten down, and she's like, you'll always be scum. And Finn just looks at her and goes, yeah, rebel scum. And the floor just gives way, and Phasma falls into like a pit of flames. So she'll be back for the next one. Maybe. She did survive the trash compactor in 7, so we'll see what happens. Again, very kind of meh. For all the hoopla they gave this character when 7 first came out, all the merchandising, all the rah. This is this trilogy's new Boba Fett. She's pretty fucking useless, guys. Like, come on. I hope that's not the end of her. I really wish they could do something creative and fun with this character, because visually she's visually striking character with the chrome armor and everything like that, and the cape, and how tall she is. Like, fuck. So it's kind of disappointing that this could be the end of her, but we'll see. Let me give me a second here. Let me check my notes, see where I'm at. Canto mission, DJ. Okay, so Luke, back on the island, sneaks onto the Falcon. This is during actually the Chewbacca barbecue scene, a little earlier on, but he sneaks onto the Falcon and he's looking around. He finds Han's dice that he had hanging in the cockpit and takes those. And then he's sitting in the cargo hold just by the chess table, and R2 comes in. And it's the first time I actually saw Farm Boy Luke from Episode 4, where he was a genuine excitement, not this morose, mean, broken down old man. And he's like, R2, you're here! And so they have a little back and forth, and Luke's like, I'm not going back, R2. There's nothing you can say that'll convince me. And R2 turns around and immediately turns on the Leia hologram from 4. And, like, oh, tear in my eye. And even Luke's like, that was a cheap one. But it kind of wakes Luke up a little bit to realize that he should probably do something, not just sit there and do nothing. Meantime, Kylo and Rey have been force connecting more. Kylo basically tries to explain to her what happened at the temple. He says his story is that Luke came in and he woke up and Luke was standing over him with his lightsaber lit, ready to kill him. And he fought back, burned the temple down, took a bunch of the students with him, and escaped. It's interesting, too, because there's about 3 or 4 different versions of this story that are played through the flashbacks throughout the course of the movie. So you're never really quite sure which one it is. Very similar to Alec Guinness's line in New Hope, where it's the truth from a certain point of view. So Luke eventually winds up deciding he's going to teach Rey some lessons. So he starts off, they go up to the top of this mountain, and she's sitting there on this rock that's in the trailers too, where you see her hands and the rocks are levitating. And he's like teaching her to reach out and like feel the light, the darkness, and she zones right in on this dark side cave that's on the island. And that's when the ground breaks, and Luke's screaming at her, going, "Rey, Rey, no, don't go, don't do it." Scares the shit out of him. He basically says, I haven't seen this kind of untamed power since Ben Solo. It didn't scare me enough then, it does now. He's like, you went straight to the dark. You didn't even try to fight it. So he's really kind of worried that if he trains her, she's going to go dark side too. She does end up going down to the cave. It's kind of a cool scene. It's a mirrored wall almost. So it looks like Rey's as far as the eye can see, and there's a really cool scene where she snaps her fingers, and it just, the reverberation of the snap throughout the entire cave just goes echoing. Really cool. At one point in this cave scene, she actually says, "Show me my parents," and these 2 shadowy images kind of appear in the mirror and coming towards her, and then they sort of blend into one, and the mirror clears and she's looking just at herself, which is kind of a foreboding of what's to come. They do explain sort of what the deal with her parents is. I'll get to that in a little bit, but yeah, so in the meantime, like I said, they've been Kylo and Rey have been force connecting. It's basically a back and forth. He's trying to convince her to go dark. She's trying to convince him to go light. She's completely convinced herself that she can turn him by herself back to the light. Phasma, DJ giving up the codes. The Executioner troopers were pretty cool with the little electric things on the end. They were going to decapitate Rose and Finn before the big battle started. So it ends up that Rey confronts Luke and says, "Did you create Kylo Ren?" Basically by trying to kill Ben Solo, and they have a little bit of a fight. Sort of. She's like fighting him with his staff, and he grabs like an antenna using the Force, and he's like. She ends up grabbing the lightsaber and knocking him down, and that was kind of cool too. He stops himself with the Force as he's falling, and then lowers himself down, and that's sort of the scene where he's like, "This is not going to go the way you think it will." From the trailers pops up. Another bit of misdirect was the scene where Rey in the trailer was like, "I need someone to show me my place in all this," and you see Kylo put his hand out. No, that's not how it happened. She was talking to Luke in that scene. The Kylo scene, holding his hand out, is a little later on, where they're talking about wanting to... he's trying to get her to join the dark side. So yeah, so Luke basically is like, get the fuck off this island, go away, leave me alone. I'm done with this. She's like, I can turn Ben back to the good side. And he's like, don't even try it. You'll get killed. It's a trap. You're fucked if you try. She doesn't care. Her and Chewie take off in the Falcon. Luke stays behind. This is a cool scene too. She jumps into an escape pod. The Falcon drops out of hyperspace. It jettisons the pod and then jumps to hyperspace immediately. The pod flies down to Snoke's ship, lands, and Kylo's there waiting for her. So he cuffs her up and brings her up to see Snoke. And Snoke is basically just sitting there chilling in his throne room with his red guards all over the place. And he's saying, you know, nice to finally meet you. You're going to tell me where Skywalker is. I'm going to take everything from you. And she's like, the hell you are. And he starts like, throws her up in the air using the Force. And that's the scene in the trailer where she's leaning back screaming. She tries a couple times to kill him. He's got obviously Luke's lightsaber on his throne next to him. She tries to Force grab it at one point, and he like loops it around and smacks her in the back of the head with it and lands it back on his throne. Then she tries by grabbing Kylo's lightsaber and making a run at him, and he just knocks her back using the Force and freezes her in place, puts her into like an execution pose, and he's like, okay, Kylo, prove your worth, kill her, and fulfill your destiny, take your final step to the dark side. Like all the shit he's done so far wasn't enough. This was a really kind of an interesting scene too, because Kylo's got his lightsaber in one hand, and Snoke's an idiot, quite honestly. He's just so full of himself and so sure of how things are going to go that he can't see the trees for the forest. While Snoke's going on saying, you know, I can see everything in his mind as he brings up his lightsaber to make the killing blow. He turns his blade towards his enemy, and as Snoke's saying all this, he's got his eyes shut, and he's like, oh yeah, this is so great. And as he's saying all this, Kylo with his free hand is controlling Luke's lightsaber. So as he's saying it, and kind of Snoke's saying away, he's turning his lightsaber to strike down his foe. You see Luke's lightsaber on the arm of the throne just sort of rotating towards Snoke in slow motion. And then Snoke finally is like, and then he turns on his lightsaber and kills his one true enemy, and you hear bzzz, and this glow of blue, and Snoke just looks down, and the lightsaber is literally right through him, one side to the other. Cuts him right in half. Kylo pulls it through with the Force, slices him in half. He literally falls in half onto the floor. Hands cut off too, because they're always drooping over his throne when he's chilling in his Hugh Hefner bathrobe. But so cuts him right in half. Lightsaber flies up. Rey reaches out and grabs it, and then all of a sudden, all 8 of the Red Guards that were guarding Snoke come at them. This was fucking awesome, dudes. They go back to back, and literally between the two of them take out all of these guys single-handedly. And it's a pretty cool fight. These guys have, like, you know, whips that they can turn into like staffs. They've got like blades that pop apart. Kylo's just like fucking decapitating people left and right. Rey, like at one point, she's fighting 3 guys in front of her, turns around and stabs some guy that's fighting Kylo behind her while she's still blocking these other guys. Really great fight though. They kill all the guards. Then at that point is when Kylo's like, okay, Rey, here's how it is. There's no Jedi, there's no Sith, there's no dark side, there's no light side. We're gonna kill everybody. Skywalker's got to die, the Resistance, the First Order, and we'll start over from new, and we'll do this together. And she's like, no. And he's like, please, you know, join me. He's like, your parents were nothing. Your parents sold you for drinking money. They were nobodies. But to me, you're somebody. I was like, oh, how sweet. So it's cool too, because at one point she reaches out her hand, and it's like, is she gonna do it? But nope, she goes for Luke's lightsaber and pulls it out of his grip, and they basically sit there with the lightsaber between them, both trying to pull at it until it literally rips in half and explodes. So they both get knocked flying. Rey ends up escaping on Snoke's shuttle, Hux comes in and finds Kylo lying on the floor there. Looks like he's dead, so Hux is like, goes to pull out his blaster. Kylo wakes up, he's like, maybe not. Puts away his blaster. And Kylo's like, okay. Hux is like, what happened? He's like, the girl killed Snoke. And escaped. We've got to go after them. And get down to that planet that they're going to and wipe them out. We're going to finish this. And Hux is like, you think I'm going to take orders from you, asshole? And he goes, the Supreme Leader is dead. And Kylo turns around and force chokes Hux, and he's like, yes, the Supreme Leader is dead. And you hear Hux go, long live the Supreme Leader. Very Monty Python-esque, a lot of the stuff Hux does in this movie, actually. Pretty funny, though. I didn't mind it. So, yeah, so they get down to Crate, which is the big salt planet. Basically, this is their last stand. They've got a few ski speeders, which are basically 50s jalopies that are breaking down. At one point, Poe literally puts his foot right through the floorboards of the thing while they're flying it. So these things are not very well equipped at all. They do have a big, huge blast shield door to protect them, but there's not really any way to get the hell out of the cave once the door's shut that they know of. So they decide they're going to mount one last offensive with whatever they've got left. The First Order show up with this battering ram cannon, which Finn says is based on Death Star tech. So I guess it's one step short of having another Death Star in this movie. Ski speeders hit the ground going after the ATM-6, the Guerrilla Walkers. Really no match at all. TIE fighters come in, start blasting all the ski speeders. They're just getting whipped. 3 TIE fighters lock onto Rose's speeder and just about to blast her, and then all of a sudden all 3 of the TIE fighters explode in one shot, and you see the shadow of the Falcon fly across the battlefield. And right away Kylo sees it, and he's like, somebody shoot that piece of junk out of the sky! And Hux is like, every ship engage that freighter. So every single one of the TIE fighters starts chasing the Falcon. Rey's in the gunner's seat. Chewie's flying. Porg's all over the place. Really great scene though. Rey's having a fucking blast. She's like, I like this, and like just dead shotting every TIE fighter she aims at. They do the whole dive into the caves and stuff like that to try to lose the TIE fighters. Really cool scene here too. They kick in with the same music they played in Return of the Jedi when Lando flies the Falcon into the Death Star. So it's exactly reminiscent of that. It's the exact same music while they're flying through the caves. Another funny bit of business with the Porg you see in one of the TV spots. Chewie banks hard and the Porg just goes splat against the windscreen. Great fight. Finn actually tries to do a suicide run on this one. He's going to fly his speeder right into the friggin' big cannon they're going to fire at the door. Rose basically drives her speeder, slams into Finn's, knocks them both clear, and Finn jumps out and runs over, and he's like, Rose, are you okay? And he's like, yeah, that was insane. What were you doing? And she's like, this battle's not about killing what we hate. It's about saving the ones we love. And kind of a cool bit there. Oh, fuck, I keep lost and forgot about another bit. Prior to this, not by much, Luke decides, this is after Rey leaves, Luke decides he's going to burn down the tree with the Jedi texts in it. And so he's walking up to it with this little flame. And as he's walking up to the tree, you see the back of Yoda's head as he's walking up, and then turns around, he's like, Master Yoda, and Yoda sees him, he goes, young Skywalker. So cool. Yoda's like, and Luke's like, I'm going to burn it down, I've got to, and then he's like, I can't. The Jedi texts and everything else, and Yoda's like, wow, page turners they were not. Did you read them? And he's like, well, no, but that's the thing. And Yoda's like, okay, well, and he looks up at the sky, and a bolt of lightning comes down and hits the tree, and it bursts into flames. So him and Luke sit there, and they're just watching the flames burning, and Yoda's trying to give him advice, and he's like, masters always have to find a lesson to teach, and failure is the greatest teacher of any lesson we can have. So basically making Luke feel a little better about himself. The failure with Kylo is a learning point, not more than anything else, that Luke should try to pass on to, like he even says, the pass on to others what you have learned. And the conversation ends with Yoda saying, the one, how does he put it? The one thing about masters is our students will always grow to be more than what we initially thought or something. It was really kind of cool the way he put it. Props to Ryan Johnson on some of the dialogue. It's really not your usual shake and bake, golly gee gosh Batman sort of stuff. Probably why a lot of the fans didn't like it, because it's like, oh my god, I gotta think. But yeah, so anyway, back to Crate, the big finale. They're basically locked in there. They're like, well, how are we going to get out? The ski speeders are getting blasted left, right, and center. They're firing up this gun. They're going to rip a hole through the gate and be in here in no time when we're done. So out of nowhere, all of a sudden, Luke walks in. And it's like shit just stops dead. And Leia looks over. She's like, Luke. And really gorgeous scene. He sits down opposite her. And they start playing the Luke and Leia theme from Return of the Jedi, where they were on the Ewok planet. And he's saying, I'm sorry, I'm not here to try to bring him back. I've got to stop him. I've got to face him. And Leia's like, I've come to the realization now that my son was gone a long time ago. Do what you got to do. And Luke's another really great line Luke has is he's like, no one's ever truly gone. And he reaches out his hand and he puts the dice from the Falcon into Leia's hand, and she just looks at them and it starts playing the Han and Leia theme from 5 again. It's like, oh, Han. Gorgeous scene though. He gets up, kisses her on the forehead, and then it starts playing like almost the Darth Vader kind of theme, the dun 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 dun. And Luke walks out into the battlefield, and all the Resistance guys are just flabbergasted. They're like, oh my god, that's Luke Skywalker. And he just walks right past all of them out into the middle of the field. And Kylo's like, everybody stop. And he sees him and he's like, every gun we have, I want you to fire on that man. And literally every single one of the walkers simultaneously opens fire, and just a barrage of fucking laser fire. On and on and on and on. And Kylo's even standing there going, more, more, more. And even the crew of the ship are like, what the fuck? Like, dude, seriously? And Hux finally is like, enough, stop shooting. And he looks at Kylo and he's like, do you think you got him? I love that bit. And then this cloud of just red from the dust and the sand and stuff on Crate. And Kylo's just sort of sitting there and just fuming. And all of a sudden you hear one of the officers on the pilots go, sir? Kylo stands up, and you see Luke walk out of the fucking cloud of dust without a mark on him. And he just looks at Kylo and goes like that. Kylo at this point is just fucking pissed. And he's like, bring me down there right now. And Hux is like, come on, Supreme Leader, don't get distracted. And Kylo basically just force pushes him against the wall. And the pilot's like, right away, sir. Going down now. While all this is going on, this kind of bothered me too, is the Resistance are kind of idiots. They're sitting there, and Poe's got the electro binoculars, and he's like, it's Kylo Ren, he's facing Luke alone. And Finn's like, no, we gotta go out there and help him. He can't face the entire army himself. And then all of a sudden, after all that's been going on for the last couple of minutes, Poe's like, well, wait a minute, he's buying us time to escape. It's like, well, duh, you fucking moron, of course he is. So then they figure out, the little crystal fox things that came into the base with them are disappeared. And they're like, there's got to be a way out. So they find this little passageway, so they're all escaping. Meanwhile, Kylo comes out and faces off with Luke, and Luke's just standing there in black robe. Looked almost like Chuck Norris, quite honestly, guys. He had the dark beard, the dark hair. Looked like he went to the fucking hairdresser before he went to Crate. But he's standing there, and Kylo's like, are you here to beg forgiveness from me?" And Luke's like, "No." And so basically Kylo's like, "Okay, well, you're dead," and rushes at him, swipes at him with the lightsaber blade, and Luke just kind of does a back dodge, and the blade just goes right across, misses him, and Kylo comes down again with another slice, and Luke does like an inverted backward twisting somersault roll, dodges the lightsaber again, and lands on his feet, and he's like, "Okay." And Kylo's just fuming at this point. He's like, "I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to destroy the last Jedi, and it's going to be the end of the Resistance and everything else." And Luke's like, "Well, you strike me down in anger, and I'll be with you for the rest of your days, just like your father." And it's like, oh. And Kylo's like, "Yeah, I'm going to wipe out, I'll kill the girl, I'll kill the Resistance, I'll kill everybody, and the Jedi will be wiped from the face of the galaxy forever." And Luke just looks at him and he goes, "Every single word you just said was wrong." He goes, "I'm not going to be the last Jedi, and you're not about to win. The war is just beginning, and that's how it is." And Kylo at this point just runs at him and just slashes at Luke with his lightsaber, and then turns around and Luke's still standing there. And Kylo's like, "What the serious fuck?" So he walks up to Luke and basically, with the lightsaber, he points it and pushes it right through Luke. And nothing. And Luke just looks at him and he goes, "See you around, kid," and vanishes. And at that point, you realize Luke is still on the island at this point. He's in a meditative pose on the rock that Rey was on, floating in the air, sweating buckets. Like, just, this is basically tapping him out, doing this for the Force. He collapses onto the rock and, sort of crawls back up, looks, and it's like, it almost looks like two suns, like it did on Tatooine. And he sort of sits there and looks at the suns, and his eyes shut, and then you see he just vanishes. And the robe just drops down to the rock and then blows off in the breeze. So Luke becomes one with the Force. Did not expect that at all. Certainly did not expect him to Force project himself to Crate. Very cool, very unexpected, very ballsy move to kill Luke, especially now with the situation being what it is, with Carrie having passed. There's no main trilogy characters left, unless they dig Lando up. End of the movie is the Resistance are pinned down. There's a rock slide, and Rey's looking for them with the little tracker thing that Leia had. They think they're trapped. All of a sudden, Rey lifts all the rocks and moves them out of the way, and the Resistance manages to escape. They all get on the Falcon and haul ass away. Kylo ends up going into the base, and they're gone. So it's like, shit, missed them. End of the movie, they're all on the Falcon. Rey finally meets Poe for the first time. They're all having a good time. It turns out the books, the Jedi Temple manuscripts, Rey actually took them. There's a scene where Finn's looking through some drawers on the Falcon, and all the books are in there. So she took all the books, which is why Yoda had no qualms about burning the tree down, because there's nothing in there. Rey and Leia have a nice little scene at the end where they're like, "Well, this is all that's left right now. How are we supposed to make a Resistance out of this?" And Leia's like, "We have all the pieces we need." And you see her, Rey's holding the shattered lightsaber that her and Kylo ripped apart in Snoke's throne room. And yeah, at this point it cuts back to the little kid, and like I said, the kid with the fat ears, and him and his buddies are telling stories about Luke Skywalker, and then the stable hand alien comes in and yells at them, and they all scatter, and the little kid walks outside, and as he's walking out, goes down the steps, and his broom's leaning against the wall, and he just reaches out like that, and the broom goes and grabs it in his hand. Force sensitive. He sees what I guess is the Falcon going into hyperspace, streaking across the sky, and he's looking up at the skies, and the Force theme plays, and he sort of lifts his broom handle up like a lightsaber, and that's the end of the movie. So it is signifying that there are more Jedi out there. They're not just gone. Luke has a neat thing where he's talking to Rey earlier on. And he's like, for you to say that the Jedi are the only ones that can have the Force is vanity. This power can be with inside anybody. Add to that the fact that they prove that by Rey being basically a nobody for now. It certainly could be that she ends up having some sort of correlation with some family tree somewhere. I'm okay though with her being a nobody. I don't think everybody needs to be interconnected. For a universe this big, for everyone to be a Skywalker, a Solo, a Calrissian, or bunched into that one sort of globule of one area of the universe, for it to be that big, which is why I'm actually excited for Rian Johnson taking a new trilogy, is he's going to do something that has nothing to do with the Skywalkers or the Solos, basically exploring other parts of this galaxy that has been growing for 40 plus years and doing it from a fresh perspective. Harping back to the audience reviews for this, right now it's at about a 57% on Rotten Tomatoes for the audience, about a 93 for critics, which is unheard of. I know a lot of people are saying, the critics are being paid off by Disney to post good reviews. I don't think so. I'm not sure why the audience hates this movie as much as they do. I've read lots of reviews where they're just like, this sucked, this wasn't Star Wars, Disney's shitting on my childhood. Like I said at the beginning of the review though, guys, I think that Rian Johnson took a great risk with the story, with the characters, where they went. I thought the performances, Mark Hamill was fucking amazing in this, guys. Adam Driver, really solid. Daisy Ridley, she's got that likable face, that's the thing. You can't help but not like her. Finn's storyline was kind of inconsequential. The whole Canto Bight stuff they could have potentially cut, but I know that they wanted to have concurring storylines for all the main characters going on. Poe had his with the Resistance, with Leia and Holdo. Rey obviously with Luke, and then Finn had to do something, because otherwise, what's the point? The Canto Bight stuff could have been cut. I really didn't like Benicio del Toro's character that much. I don't think that he added much to the affair, other than just having somebody to betray them. Phasma, again, wasted completely. Like I said, I hope they can figure something to do with this character out, because it's a shame from a visual standpoint. Snoke, they really didn't answer very much in the way of where he was, who he was, where he was from, anything like that. Andy Serkis in some interviews has said that Snoke was not a Sith. He did have some cool lines near the beginning where he was talking to Kylo, and he's like, this girl is basically the counterbalance to the darkness in you. The Force will automatically create something light that's equally powerful to balance everything out, which is the explanation for why Rey even exists. What else? The Mary Poppins scene with Leia, really I didn't like that much. As I said, I thought that was the perfect out that you could have used, even in post, to write Carrie Fisher's character out of the equation in a nice way. I'm really kind of curious to see what they're going to do with her for Episode 9, because there's not a lot of options. The estate has already said they don't want to use CGI. They did it briefly in Rogue One, as you know, with a young Leia at the end. I really don't think that a full performance, look at Tarkin in Rogue One. The technology's getting there, but there were still points in Rogue One where I looked at Tarkin and I'm like, he just doesn't look right. Or more recently, Justice League with Cavill's mustache. That opening scene with the webcam video, oh my god, his face looked like Gumby. It's just not to the point yet where I think that they can fully get away with creating an entire character from scratch and having it work so that it looks realistic enough. There we go. Don't mind me. So yeah, overall, really liked the movie. Like I said, I did have some issues with a couple of scenes here or there. Definitely not enough lightsaber combat. The one fight with Rey and Kylo against the guards was really cool. There was literally no fight between Kylo and Luke at the end, because Luke technically wasn't even there. One thing that's cool to watch out for the next time you see the movie, when they're on Crate, everybody makes red footprints. Luke does not, at any point, make any sort of footprint in the sand, which is kind of... You'd have to really be looking for it. It also, well, in hindsight, knowing that it was a projection of him, something to watch out for, though, in later viewings. Another thing I did notice was at one point when Rey's on the island with Luke, you see some sort of monstrous, huge fish thing just sort of pop out of the water and dive underneath again in the background as she's walking up a cliff top. Little things like that, like, you know, that's what makes Star Wars so great. It's the small details. Shit you wouldn't think of seeing. Like in Return of the Jedi, the shot outside of Jabba's palace where that frog critter's sitting there and just out of nowhere he just goes and shoots his tongue out and grabs like some little bug on the side and eats it and then belches. Like stuff like that is what makes the franchise fun. The little touches that add some realism, some depth, and some character to the environments. Again, a lot of good use of practical effects. The Porgs, a lot of the aliens on Canto Bight. Gary Fisher, Carrie's dog, has a cameo in Canto Bight. I didn't see him in the movie. There is a photo from one of the Entertainment Weekly magazines that shows him full on staring right at the camera. So if you Google Rose and Finn on Canto EW, you should be able to see a picture of Gary there. Justin Theroux had a cameo. The Prince William and Prince Harry, apparently their cameo was cut. I think they were supposed to have been stormtroopers that were guarding Finn and Rose. Their part, apparently, according to Boyega, was cut on the cutting room floor. Johnson did say that his original cut of this movie was over 3 hours. There is not going to be a director's cut Blu-ray. He already said that specifically. There will be a lot of deleted scenes. He said there were, in some cases, entire sequences that were cut from the movie that just, for whatever reason, didn't mesh with what was going on. But yeah, I think overall I'd give this movie probably high 8s, low 9s. Aside from the few small nitpicks I had with it, I thought it was a very enjoyable movie. I don't think that Rian Johnson is shitting on Star Wars in any way, shape, or form. I think he did an admirable job of writing and directing this movie. So much so that they gave him the keys to the kingdom and said, "Hey, you want to make another trilogy? Go ahead." So that's got to be something, especially with the situation with Rogue One, where they brought in Tony Gilroy to finish up the movie, where the Lord and Miller were fired from the Han Solo movie and replaced with Ron Howard. You know, Lucasfilm's not fucking around, and neither is Disney. They know that this is a lucrative franchise that can make some serious money, and they're not about to fuck about with, you know, making half-assed projects just to sell some action figures. Case in point, like I said, what they've done with the directors of those two movies. Who else was it? Josh Trank. Yeah, fantastic fuck up 4. He was supposed to do the Boba Fett movie, and they fired him before he'd even started working on the picture because he was such a dick doing Fantastic Four. But harp back to episode 1 of my show for my thoughts on that movie. Anyway, coming up on an hour runtime now. I'm kind of running out of things I can think of to say. Overall, not bad. The 3D, quite honestly, I went and saw it regular 3D opening night. By the end of it, my eyes were starting to hurt. So anybody who's not a huge fan of 3D, beware. Some very cool scenes in 3D, but if that's not your cup of tea, then I would recommend going If you can get regular IMAX, then cool. If you can't, then regular non-3D. Going with a buddy next week, actually, and he doesn't want to see 3D because he wears glasses. Same problem the wife has. Glasses on glasses suck. I luckily don't have that problem, but I can sympathize with those who do. But don't believe the audience reviews. Don't read too much into what the critics are saying. Go see for yourself. It's Star Wars. I mean, we get treated to these movies once every couple of years now. It's slowly becoming a Christmas tradition, which is fine by me. Quite honestly, like I said, for Force Awakens and for this, more excited for this than Christmas. So definitely worth checking out. Some great performances. Mark Hamill was fucking phenomenal. Carrie Fisher, there were parts in that movie where I literally had a lump in my throat and a tear in my eye, just from seeing her on screen. Good overall work by the rest of the cast. Again, the shortcomings I mentioned. Some of the characters were really given short shrift. Some of the answers that fans are looking for aren't going to be the ones they want. I know a lot of people are pissed that Rey's a nobody. They wanted her to be a Palpatine or a Kenobi or something like that. But like I said, you know, we got a big-ass universe here. Not everybody's got to fucking know everybody. But, yeah, overall, wife watched it last night. She says about a 7.5 out of 10. I'd go a little higher. I'd go 8, 5, 9. Definitely will be seeing it again. And I heartily recommend checking it out for anybody that's got a passing interest in Star Wars. Rian Johnson, fantastic director. If you haven't seen the movie Looper with Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Bruce Willis, brilliant movie. It came out a few years back. Brick was also a Rian Johnson movie. And yeah, I heartily recommend checking it out. As always, post your comments in the posts below. Let me know what you think. Let me know what your favorite scenes weren't, what you thought of the reveal at the end with the Force projection. Just overall what you thought. Obviously, tell your friends, like, subscribe, check it out. I'll probably do another review shortly. You can tell I'm getting to the end of the video when I start humming. Probably going to do a Hot Toys review of the Force Awakens Han Solo figure. I might bust out the Chewbacca figure at the same time and do a twofer. But that'll probably be, I don't know, next weekend maybe. But we'll see. Depends on what kind of free time I'm looking at. Anyway, for now, from somewhere in Ontario, this has been an episode of Chew Drink Minimum, Star Wars Last Jedi spoiler review. Thanks all for watching. Have a good one.